Chapter 4, Part 2. The 7th of February, 2019. An early start, Mr. Diary. As soon as I finish this breakfast and pack an overnight bag, you and I are heading north. It is pitch black outside, and it'll be pitch black at 4 p.m. too. I hate winter days. I need to make the most of the daylight hours while I'm up there. It's not the best of time to be tackling narrow country roads and farm tracks, but the van should be able to cope with it. The weather forecast isn't great though. Sleet and snow. In fact, the last few days have been pretty much the same. I've absolutely no idea what I'm going to find there, if anything, but I need to make the most of the light. I don't expect the weather or the people will be very inviting on days like this. I know I would be. Some stranger knocking on your door asking questions about a man who was born there nearly a century ago. I know I'm going to the countryside, but the term needle in a haystack springs to mind. I need to find a start, a foothold, something or someone to help open a few doors. Mr. Green seems happy to pay, but he'll want something back for his money. At this time I should beat all the morning traffic and be there by around 9 a.m, all being well. Once you pass Lancaster there isn't much on the road other than tractors and sheep. The Green Hill Hotel on the outskirts of Wigton is my destination. A nice spot by the looks of it, on the main road too. It boasts a beautiful 200-year-old building set in charming gardens and only 11 miles from the Lake District National Park. The pictures certainly look nice, and an evening meal included in the price. Lovely. It is £90 a night. I better make sure I get that back sharpish too. I will file an expenses and wages invoice on my return home. I need to make sure this guy is good for the money before I embark on the long-term project. Right, time to eat up, pack up and get out. Another update later when I reach Greenhill. Prospect is about 5 miles away from the hotel. I wonder what my prospects are of finding Mr. Grimshaw. 10 a.m. Room 6, Greenhill Hotel, Wigton, Cumbria. A lovely, smooth journey to justify my decision to set off not long after the milkmen start their rounds. Most of the journey was spent driving in the dark, and apart from a service station stop for a pee and a coffee near the Lancashire-Cumbria border, the trip was without incident. There is something very satisfying about leaving the city behind and heading into the countryside. I am by no means a spiritual kind of chap, but even I can feel an aura of peace and tranquillity when the pace of life slows. And what countryside it is! Less than 5 miles off the motorway, and the jagged outlines of the mountain tops tower up to greet you. There is a job to do here, but it doesn't feel like work. I won't be camping out in the transit van here for hours on end. I have no idea who I'm coming to look for, or what I might find, but I'll be doing it in the base of a comfortable hotel with a hot meal inside me, all paid for by a man I've never met, 250 miles away. The room is lovely too, clean, welcoming, fresh. Here I am, sprawled on a king-size bed, debating whether or not to spend an hour in the bath, or get on with the task in hand. I calculate that I have approximately 6 hours of daylight in which to gather information, investigate and probe, and I shouldn't really waste this time lounging about. Sod it, I can't resist. I can't resist a soak. It looks so inviting. I can gather my thoughts and make a plan while I'm in the tub. If needs be, I can work an extra hour in the dark. They have even provided a decent standard of bubble bath. Oh, the perfect start to the day. 12 noon. Plan of action for day 1. Paper trail. Visit Prospect. Locate the family house. Photographs to be taken for evidence of any remaining building related to Mr. Grimshaw's family, e.g. farm, local amenities, pub, church, cemetery, etc. Is Mr. Green keeping a scrapbook? If he is, I wonder what he'd want in it. Check records, church library, school, social media groups of the area. Seek out any local historian or community groups for further information. Identify long-standing sports and social clubs and when they were founded. Roll of honour, player of the year, committee members, etc. Return to hotel for updates and evening meal. The lamb looks delicious. I might even treat myself to a few drinks and a dessert, all on expenses, of course. If only all the jobs were like this one. Right, update as I go along. 1:30 p.m. A promising, if somewhat unusual start. I cannot say the same about the weather, though. Heavy showers. Prospect is a strange place. Not really what I expected. A small village just off the main road to West Cumbria. A pub, a small shop, post office, a couple of workshops, and a smattering of different types of dwellings. Perhaps because of the weather it was made to look even bleaker than usual, but it was not the idyllic settlement I had in mind on the fringes of the Lake District. Very much a working class area, with a mismatch of structures surrounded by miles and miles of farmland. I decided to start with the farm and the birthplace. It was not what I expected to find. Greenbank had functioned as a farm since 1798, according to Google, and it's still running as one today. Google can only tell you so much, though. So a visit to the Miners' Arms, the village's only public house, proved to be worthwhile. From the outside the place did not look very welcoming, but the warmth of the greeting inside soon lightened the mood. On entering, I was greeted by Stella, an old English sheepdog, and Sheila, anything but a dog, behind the bar. I confess I wanted to tickle the tummy of both, but I settled for Stella on this occasion. I sat on a stool beside the bar, ordered a pint, and explained why I was in the area. Sheila leaned in and listened intently. So did the other locals gathered around the bar, but more of them later. They seemed fascinated by what I had to say, excited even. I suppose I was expecting a degree of secrecy and reserve, or even suspicion, but they couldn't have been more accommodating and helpful. Perhaps this interlude was a flicker of excitement of it on a drab day, maybe a romanticized notion of what a private investigator does. Either way, their enthusiasm and eagerness to help was very welcome. When I explained what was being asked of me, they began to tell me what they already knew about the farm, and who, locally, could help me find out what I was looking for. Greenbank was now run and managed by Keith Brockbank and family. I was informed that he was a cantankerous bastard in the morning, a tight bastard when it came to buying around, and a drunken, friendly bastard in the evening. For a triple bastard, they did speak highly of him, though, and his family. But they'd only been on the farm since 2010. They purchased the holding from Robert Robertson, or Bob, as he was affectionately known. He owned the farm for nearly 20 years before the Brockbanks took over. A serial womanizer and gambler by all accounts. No one could understand the former, as to quote my new friend Ronnie, he had a face like Les Dawson sucking on a lemon. He must have had other qualities, Sheila suggested. This caused a ripple of laughter around the bar. Before Bob owned the place, it was occupied by a lovely old couple called Harold and Clara Papworth. They had Greenbank for over 20 years too, and only old age and their subsequent death forced the sale. All this would have taken us back to the 1970s. Mr. Grimshaw would have been about 40 at the time. I purposefully did not ask them to tell me about him, if they had anything at all to tell. They were enjoying filling me in on the farm's history, and I was more than happy to listen to their tales. It seemed like they were leading me somewhere, but I didn't know where. My dictaphone was on all of the time. I didn't want to miss a trick. Alf, what a great name that is, clearly the oldest around the bar by some considerable margin, chipped in next. Harold bought the place from Billy Turnbull, he informed us. Bill was a nice man, kept himself to himself, though. Never married. Not sure how long he'd had it for, but it must have been a decade at least. And before him it sat empty for a while. Derelict. Me and the lads used to play up there as boys. The grounds were lying empty, no doors and windows, nowt inside at all. I must have been about 10 at the time. It was our den, our haunted house, our hideaway. Before Billy, it was empty for as long as I can remember. I was born in 1944, so I'm guessing it had been vacant since not too long after the war. Early 50s, maybe, before Billy stepped in to bring it up to scratch. The owners before Bill built the cottages beside the old house and sold large parts of their land to developers. They lived in one of those cottages, I think, and rented out the others. I think they retained some of the land, but it was only a small part of the holding. Most of the old farm was ours to explore as kids. At this point, I was estimating the farm to have been lying in a state of disrepair since the late 1940s. My man would have only been 16 at this point. The memory trail ended there. I decided to ask the question after all. "Do you know Ernest Grimshaw?" I asked. They all nodded and smiled. "Hi, son," said Alf. "Ernest lives in one of those cottages next to the farmhouse. Give him a knock. He should be in." Bingo! This was proving to be easier than I imagined.